If you give me less than 15 minutes of your time today, I promise you'll come out of this video equipped with knowledge that'll change the way people perceive you. Warren Buffett says, if you can't communicate, it's like winking at a girl in the dark. Nothing happens. You can have all the brain power in the world, but you have to be able to transmit it. And that transmission is communication. Now, regardless of whether you agree with Warren, one thing is for certain. Communication is something that literally anyone can benefit from. Doesn't matter how old you are, what industry you work in, what stage of life you're at. Studies have shown that better communicators not only make more money and have better work outcomes, but also just have better relationships with the people around them. If you're new to the channel, hi, my name is Matt. I'm currently a strategy and operations associate at Google, and before that was a management consultant. Today, I want to share with you the most valuable tips and advice that I've learned so that you too can improve the way you interact with other people. Let's get right into it. Okay, so what is communication? Communication is when you try to transmit a message to another person. And sometimes the message is properly received, but other times the message is not properly relayed, and so the other person is left thinking, what the heck does this person mean? Now, if we break things down into first principles and we really try to think about the components of communication from the perspective of the person who's delivering the message, I would say that there are two components. The first is the idea, what we want to say and what we're thinking about in our head. And the second is the actual message that gets delivered. So idea and then the reality of the message that actually gets delivered. Now, good communicators don't have a discrepancy between the idea and the message that's being communicated. But most people run into issues when it comes to translating your idea or your thoughts into actual words. And an example of this is like when you were in elementary school and you had a crush on a girl, and your idea was, oh, I like this person and I want them to know that I like them, but then instead you made fun of them or you made a joke that was mean about them. And so they thought that you were being mean to them, but in reality you actually like them, and you just don't know how to express that in the right way so that they perceive it properly. And so I would argue that the first step to being able to accurately convey your ideas starts though with understanding. Because if you don't have a clear idea of what you're trying to communicate to another person, then how can you expect, even with the best possible delivery in the world, how can you expect them to understand the concept or the emotion that you're trying to convey? And so this is where there's two things I think are critically important for making sure you have this understanding component. The first is training yourself to think in first principles and to really force yourself to understand the basic components of whatever it is you're trying to convey. So for example, if you are trying to explain to a colleague some complex, technical, scientific concept, then you need to make sure that you actually understand that concept extremely well and that you can literally teach it to a 5-year-old without resorting to industry jargon or fancy big words. Because if you can't do that, then it means that you don't actually understand the idea or the concept. Similarly, self-awareness is really important because, say, for example, we want to convey an emotion that we're feeling to someone else. But if we haven't taken the time to process that emotion and to really understand, why do I feel this way? Why am I angry at this person? Or why do I feel sad? Then we can't properly ensure that we're going to deliver the message properly to that other person. And so it depends on the situation, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to understanding the ideas and the feelings that you're trying to then deliver to this other person. But assuming that you do understand the idea that you're trying to convey, then the next problem that most people run into is how do you accurately deliver it? And the delivery is where I think 99% of communication advice on the internet comes in, right? They tell you things like, make sure to take a deep breath before you speak, use the right vocabulary, follow a structured approach. Now, none of this advice is bad necessarily, but what I find oftentimes is it fails to account for the first component, which I just spoke about, which is the understanding of the actual idea that you're trying to convey. But now let's talk about the highest value tips that I've learned about actually getting good at the delivery of the message that you want to convey. So number one is you have to record yourself. Now, I know what you're thinking. Matt, of course you're saying that. Like, you're a YouTuber, you record videos all the time. I'm not a YouTuber. Why do I need to record myself? Well, the reason is because recording yourself is the fastest possible way to get feedback. And we, as humans, are the harshest critics of ourselves. So what better way to get feedback on your own communication skills than to force yourself to be the own critic of the message that you're trying to deliver, right? And I know most of you, when you record yourself, if you've ever done this before, you will cringe at first at how your voice sounds and how you look on camera. You're gonna be like, what the heck? I sound like that? I look like that on camera? And I know this because most people aren't used to recording themselves, but for me, because now I make all these YouTube videos and I've been doing it for a while, I know what my voice sounds like and I know what I look like on camera. And people will now come up to me and say, Matt, you're so articulate. How did you get so good at communicating? But the thing is, if you just go back to my earliest YouTube videos over a year ago on my channel, what you'll see is that I was not this comfortable speaking. I was not good at explaining concepts. I was very, very awkward with my words. But posting videos forced me to basically spend hours looking at myself, listening to my voice, my tonality, seeing how I came across. And so I got a ton of feedback. And so if you're serious about improving your communication, one of the most actionable and immediate ways to improve is to just start recording yourself. If you have to give a presentation, record yourself. If you have an interview, record yourself. If you have a phone call that you're feeling nervous about, record yourself trying to practice what you're going to say. If you have to have a hard conversation with someone, record yourself. There's literally zero downside. Now, the second thing is you need to learn how to become a good storyteller. Now, let me give you an example of why this is so effective. Say, for example, I went to work one day and then I ran into my friend on the way to work on the subway. Now, if someone asked me, hey Matt, how did your day go? And I told them, oh yeah, it was good. I, in the morning, commuted to work and I actually ran into my friend Jake. Then they would be like, okay, awesome. But there's nothing special about the way that I said it. Now, on the other hand, if I said something like, yeah, so, this morning actually I was on my way to the subway, I had my earbuds in, I was dialed in listening to the latest Drake album as I usually do on my commute to work. And when I'm about to get off the train, I'm like turning, somebody taps me on the shoulder. And my first thought is like, okay, first of all, why is someone tapping me on the shoulder? Is it a homeless guy that's trying to ask me for money? Like, do I need to be afraid for my safety? Like, why is someone bothering me at 8:30 a.m. in the morning? And so I'm thinking all these things, but then I turn around and then I see my friend Jake and he's like, holy crap, you're on the train too? And that just absolutely made my day. Because normally I don't run into my friends on the subway going to work. And so what I did just there was I created a story out of a very normal interaction. And the point I'm trying to get across is that if you can learn to tell stories and become an effective storyteller, that is how you can captivate people. And it doesn't matter what situation it is, whether it's like at a party or at lunch with your friends and you're trying to tell them about something that happened, or if it's a more formal corporate setting and maybe you're interviewing for a job or you're trying to explain something to a coworker or your boss or give a presentation. Being able to tell stories captivates your audience and it gives people another reason to pay attention to what you're actually saying. And so that's step number 2 is get good at storytelling. Now the last thing is you need to immerse yourself with people that are good communicators and with content that represents the kind of communication that you want to be able to convey. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, one of the biggest things that contributed to my improvement in communication was the fact that when I was working in investment banking and in management consulting, and even now in tech, I'm surrounded by people who are really great communicators. And I'm surrounded by people who are really charismatic, eloquent, and have a way with words. I'm not naturally this way. And in college, I clearly remember being one of the most awkward people on campus. I literally forced myself to take a public speaking class because I felt like it was such a big issue that was holding me back. But what I later realized is that when I just surrounded myself, when I talked to people who were working in professional jobs, when I did internships, and when I just listened to podcasts and watched YouTube videos of people who were great communicators, this drastically improved my communication abilities because subconsciously, if you immerse yourself in something, then it's going to come out in the way that you think and the way that you communicate. And so regardless of whether it's the content that you consume on the internet or the people that you interact with, be very thoughtful about how you're spending your hours. Because like it or not, the way that we live influences the way that we think and the way that we communicate. And so now you're already equipped with a deeper level of understanding about communication that most people don't have. And if you just take the steps to improve on all of the things that I've discussed here, then I'm confident that you'll be able to improve your communication skills.